After the sudden loss of her husband, Nurse Claire Hughes leans on her two very different sisters and her eccentric mom to navigate grief with unexpected humor and warmth. Through laughter, love, and a goat named Tammy, Claire discovers that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding joy again, one messy day at a time. Welcome to Story Time with Papa Al. Let's join Claire on her journey.
If you had asked me a year ago what my life looked like, I would have painted you a picture so bright you'd squint. A cozy house with a creaky back porch, a job I actually liked most days, and a husband who left love notes in the fridge next to the pickles. I was Claire Hughes, registered nurse, overthinker, night owl, and head over heels, in love with my high school sweetheart, Daniel. We weren't perfect, thank God. Daniel snored like a bear in a tunnel, and I had the annoying habit of clipping coupons with wild abandon. But we laughed. Oh, we laughed. Our marriage ran on humor, coffee, and an unspoken agreement that whoever got up first had to feed the dog and start the Keurig. He'd tell me every day, every damn day, I love you more than cheese, and you know that's saying something. Daniel was an EMT, tall and broad-shouldered, with a jawline that made shampoo commercials look lazy. But he never noticed how good-looking he was. He was too busy helping grannies with their oxygen tanks and calming panicked car crash victims with a voice like maple syrup. We met when I was 16, and he was 17. He tutored me in biology, though in hindsight I think I failed on purpose just to keep him around. He wore a Superman hoodie to our first date and gave me a dead flower he found in the school parking lot because it looked like it needed a second chance. We got married at 24 under a string of lights in my parents' backyard. His vows made me cry and hiccup at the same time. "You're the laugh in my lungs," he said, completely ruining any mascara I had left. We never had kids, not yet. We talked about it, but we were still in the early married blur of weekend pancakes and Sunday grocery runs. We weren't in a rush. We thought we had time. We were wrong. Tuesday started like any other. Daniel kissed me goodbye with coffee breath and forgot his lunch, like usual. I packed it and texted him a photo of it on the counter with a frowny face. He replied with a gif of a penguin falling down. At noon, I was giving meds to a patient in room 208 when my charge nurse walked in. She looked pale. Her voice was a whisper. "Claire, there's been an accident. It's Daniel." Everything after that was white noise. They said it was fast. He was on the highway responding to a call, and a truck blew through a stop sign. The impact was instant, massive, no pain, they said. No goodbye, I thought. The day after the funeral, I stood in the kitchen staring at a spoon, not using it, just staring. I'd pulled it out to stir my coffee, then forgot what coffee even was. Everything in the house felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by normalcy. His shoes by the door, his sweatshirt still slung over the banister, the coffee cup in the sink with a lipstick smudge that wasn't mine. Don't worry, it was from me trying his chapstick last week. I panicked for a second, too. Then the doorbell rang. Correction, the door was kicked open. "Claire Elizabeth Hughes, do not panic. I am here with liquor and delusions of competence." Morgan, my younger sister, 5'2", hair dyed like a traffic cone, wearing leggings with cat faces and a t-shirt that said, "emotionally unavailable, but thanks for asking." Behind her, Becca followed in a neat wool coat and tasteful boots. She was already assessing my mental state like a therapist who just spotted a meltdown in progress. "Hi, honey," Becca said gently, brushing a hand over my shoulder. "I made you a Google spreadsheet for your emotional recovery. There's color coding." And trailing behind them, of course, Mom, Rhonda, wearing giant sunglasses indoors, dragging a pink leopard print rolling suitcase and holding a covered casserole dish like it was the crown jewels. "Your father says hi," she announced. "Mom, Dad died in 2011, I said softly. She waved me off. "Not that father, your godfather. Carl, from the bowling league. We spoke on the phone. He's sending soup." Morgan dumped her duffel on the couch, kicked off her sneakers, and threw herself onto the recliner like she paid rent. Becca sighed and started lining up tea mugs on the counter. "And me? I stood in the middle of my own kitchen and let it all happen. Because if I didn't, if I tried to stop it or think or feel, I might dissolve entirely. By nightfall, my house had transformed into a bizarre hybrid between a grief retreat and a sitcom. Mom tried to help me redecorate the emotional energy by rearranging my throw pillows and burning a candle called Mystic Rain. She also put the casserole in the oven and promptly forgot about it for 40 minutes. I was meditating, she said, as smoke curled out of the oven door. Morgan sang show tunes while folding my laundry, incorrectly, and narrated my emotional journey like she was hosting a true crime podcast. Day 3. Claire tries to wear real pants. Fails. A single tear is spotted. Casserole remnants remain at the scene. Becca, bless her spreadsheet-loving soul, took charge of my to-do list. Funeral thank you cards, bank paperwork, health insurance updates, everything Daniel and I had never wanted to think about. You don't have to do this, I mumbled as she sorted envelopes at the kitchen table. Yes, I do, she said simply. You loved him, I love you. That's how math works. That night I couldn't sleep. The bed was too big, too cold, too quiet. I curled into his pillow, pressed my face into it, and cried until I ran out of tears. Around 1 a.m., Morgan crept in. Move over, she whispered, already flinging back the blankets. You're wearing a face mask, I muttered. It's my grief mask. Hydration is healing. She laid beside me, arm tucked under her head. Remember when we were kids and you told me there were sea monsters in the toilet at night? I blinked. That was to keep you from flushing your beanie babies again. I believed you for 2 years. That's love, Claire. And even though my heart was still shattered, and my chest still felt like it had a sandbag sitting on it, I laughed. A small surprise sound. Morgan smiled in the dark. There she is. The next morning, I woke to the smell of burned toast and someone swearing at the microwave. In the kitchen, Morgan was using a spatula as a microphone while dancing in front of the open fridge. She was wearing one of my bathrobes and Daniel's old slippers, which flopped wildly with every move. I am the queen of leftovers, she declared. Kneel before your carb lady. Claire doesn't even have leftover carbs, Becca muttered, sipping coffee and scanning her tablet. She's been living off breath mints and coffee for 2 weeks. Morgan pointed her spatula. Then we must make her eat. And that's how I found myself forcibly involved in what Mom called a family dinner healing ceremony, which mostly consisted of Becca trying to roast broccoli, Morgan setting off the smoke alarm with a garlic bread incident, and Mom pouring Pinot Grigio into a slow cooker because she thought it would soften the vibes. I sat at the kitchen table watching them with the fuzzy detachment of someone who'd accidentally wandered into an improv group therapy session. Claire, Becca said gently, glancing over as she stirred the rice with robotic precision. How are you doing, really? I looked at her, my big sister, the steady one, the one who'd fixed my scraped knees and filed my taxes. Her brow was furrowed. She cared. So much. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I said, Daniel used to do this thing with broccoli. She paused. What thing? If I overcooked it, he'd pretend it was a crime scene. He'd lie dramatically across the kitchen floor and whisper, Broccicide. She never saw it coming. Morgan stopped mid-stir. That man was a legend. I smiled, blinking hard. I used to think our marriage was kind of boring, you know. We didn't travel much. We never had wild parties. But God, we had fun. We had this rhythm, like we spoke a language no one else knew. Becca reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, warm, grounding. You didn't need grand gestures, she said. You had real love, the everyday kind. That's rarer than people think. I nodded, swallowing around the lump in my throat. Then Mom entered the room wearing oven mitts on both hands like boxing gloves. Dinner is slightly burned, she announced, but it's seasoned with intentions. That night, we ate half-charred broccoli and frozen pizza and toasted Daniel with grape juice in wine glasses because none of us wanted more Pinot crock-pot stew. Morgan told stories about Daniel sneaking her into R-rated movies when she was 15. Becca recounted the time he helped her build an IKEA bookshelf, and they both cried halfway through. Mom pulled out an old photo album from our wedding. We passed it around, and I pointed at each picture like I was introducing them to someone they'd never met. That's the moment he whispered that he was wearing mismatched socks under his tux. Here, I was trying not to cry because he said my mascara was waterproof. It wasn't. Here's the slow dance. He hummed through the whole thing, said he didn't want the DJ's version to ruin his groove. My chest ached, but it wasn't the sharp, shattering pain anymore. It was softer, like a bruise that still hurts when pressed, but doesn't steal your breath. Later, while the house settled and dishes clattered in the sink, Becca found me sitting alone on the back steps. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I think I might be getting there." She sat beside me, her shoulder bumping mine. We watched the stars in silence for a minute. "You know what Daniel told me once?" I said quietly. After one of his rough calls, he said no matter how bad the night gets, the sun always shows up for round two. Becca smiled gently. He wasn't wrong. "No," I whispered, looking up at the moon. "He rarely was." "Today," Morgan announced, flinging open the curtains in my bedroom like she was auditioning for a musical, "we reclaim the pants." I squinted at the sunlight. "What?" "You, me, the thrift store. Operation Emotional Support Jeans. Let's go." "I'm not ready to—" "Claire," she said gently but firmly, sitting on the bed beside me, "you can't live in Daniel's hoodie forever. It's starting to smell like old cheese and depression." "It's comforting," I muttered. "It's fuzzy mildew, babe." Becca poked her head in, holding a reusable coffee cup. "I second the jeans trip. Also, I emailed you a gentle reentry work schedule with optional nap windows." "Why are you all like this?" I groaned, flopping back into the pillows. Morgan smirked. "Because grief doesn't mean you stop living. It means you carry someone with you while you do it." The thrift store was chaos, as expected, a mix of old mannequins, soft jazz, and a woman loudly asking if her husband could pull off velour. Morgan darted through the racks like a raccoon on espresso. I trailed after her in a daze, holding a pair of pants I didn't remember picking up. She turned around, holding up the most horrendous pair of floral jeggings I'd ever seen. "These scream I may be grieving, but I still party." "They scream I've given up." Same thing. As we laughed, something cracked open in me. Something good. A flutter of joy, however small. I found a pair of jeans that fit. Not perfectly, not magically, but they zipped. They didn't make me cry. That was enough. At the checkout, a cashier about my age looked at me and said, "Cute shirt." It was Daniel's, one of his band tees from college. My chest squeezed, but I didn't cry. "Thanks," I said. "It was my husband's. He passed." The cashier's face softened. "Mine too, 3 years, motorcycle." We looked at each other as two strangers in a thrift store sharing a silent, weighty kind of understanding. "I'm Claire," I offered. "Angie," she said. "Hang in there, Claire. The firsts are hard, but one day it feels like breathing again." That night I sat on the back porch in my emotional support jeans, petting the neighbor's cat who had decided my house was now hers. I named her Nibbles. She looked like she judged me constantly. I texted my charge nurse, "I think I'm ready to come back." My fingers hovered over the message for a moment. My heart beat too fast, but I hit send. Almost immediately, "We miss you. Mondays and Thursdays. Light schedule, no pressure, and I'm putting a lock on the supply closet because I know how you get when you're stressed." I snorted. The next morning, Becca made oatmeal. Morgan tried to feed me a leftover corn dog from the back of the fridge. Mom wandered in wearing slippers that looked like flamingos and asked if the Queen of England had emailed yet. "I wrote her a letter about you." "Dear God," Becca murmured into her coffee. Mom beamed. "She deserves to know Claire's a warrior. Also, I might have mentioned our casserole collection." As I got dressed for my first shift back, I found myself pausing in front of the mirror. For the first time in weeks, I saw someone who looked almost like me. Hair tied back, scrubs on, Daniel's watch on my wrist, a tiny smile. "Round two," I whispered. "Okay, let's do this." The hospital smelled exactly the same, like antiseptic, mystery soup, and a hint of panic. I stepped into the staff lounge and was immediately hit with a wall of affection disguised as sarcasm. Well, well, if it isn't Nurse Tragic but still fab, said Tara, a nurse from night shift, arms folded and grinning. I thought you retired to live on a commune of cats, someone else said. I did, I replied, managing a smile. Turns out cats are terrible at drawing blood. Laughter, hugs, coffee. Someone shoved a croissant into my hand like it was a peace offering. It was perfect. Even the equipment welcomed me back. The blood pressure cuff on bed 6 still made that weird squeaking sound when inflating, and the label on the IV cart still read, Claire's cart. Touch it and die. For a second, I almost forgot. Almost. Then I passed the ambulance bay, the empty spot where Daniel's rig used to pull in, and the air changed. I paused, chest tight. Then Tara appeared beside me and gently nudged my elbow. Come help me with a grumpy diabetic in room 4 who says he only eats Cheetos and conspiracy theories. I turned, breathed, nodded. Sounds like my kind of man. The day moved fast. That's the thing about hospital shifts. They carry you. You don't have time to think. I took vitals, gave meds, cracked dumb jokes to distract a nervous patient before an IV stick. I felt pieces of myself reattaching. During lunch, Becca texted me. Becca, how are you? Me, surviving. No patients have bitten me. Yet, Becca, that's a win. Also, Mom joined something called goat yoga for mourners. Should we be worried? Me, I have so many questions. Becca, same. Later that evening, I returned home to the sound of bleeding. Claire, Mom shouted from the living room. They said no refunds. There she was, and standing barefoot, holding a laminated flyer in one hand and a tiny goat on a leash in the other. Mom, I said slowly, is that a goat? Yes, she said brightly. Her name is Tammy. She's my grief partner. We bonded spiritually. Morgan walked by with a granola bar and said, I give it 2 days before Tammy poops in your shoe. Becca sighed and poured wine. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my purse. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the goat had been temporarily relocated to the garage, don't ask, I found Becca at the kitchen table reading. No spreadsheets, just a novel. Couldn't sleep, I asked. She shook her head. Too many thoughts. I sat down across from her and picked at the edge of a coaster. I used to think I had time, I said quietly. We always think that, don't we? That we'll take the trip next year, have the kid next year, but sometimes you run out of nexts. Becca looked at me, her eyes soft. I know. She reached out, took my hand. I hate that this happened. I hate that you're hurting, but I'm so damn proud of how you're carrying it. I swallowed hard. I don't feel strong. You're showing up. Every day, that's strength. I let out a shaky breath and gave her hand a squeeze. We sat there in silence, just existing, and sometimes that's enough. 2 weeks later, on a clear Saturday evening, we had a backyard dinner under string lights. Just the 4 of us, me, Morgan, Becca, and Mom, plus Tammy the goat, who was now, for reasons still unclear to me, wearing a pink tutu. I don't think grief yoga intended for you to keep the goat, Becca said, pouring lemonade. She chose me, Mom replied, feeding Tammy half a cookie. It's spiritual, like emotional Velcro. Morgan was making grilled cheese sandwiches over a portable griddle she'd set up on the patio table. We are so unqualified to be this emotionally healthy, she said. I smiled. Speak for yourself. I've been journaling and doing breathing exercises like a monk. You threw a shoe at a spider yesterday, Becca reminded me. Spiders are not part of my healing journey, I deadpanned. We laughed, loud and messy and real. And then, when the sun was nearly gone and the fireflies began their little show, I brought out the box. It was a simple wooden one, painted navy blue with Daniel's initials on top. Inside, the photo album, his favorite watch, a concert ticket from the first show we went to together, a note he'd written in the margin of a recipe book, less oregano. You're not impressing anyone. I sat cross-legged and opened the album. Remember this one? I held up a photo of Daniel at our wedding, balancing a cupcake on his nose. I still can't believe he got frosting in his boutonniere. Morgan said, leaning in. He made a toast where he forgot half the words and made up the rest, Becca added, smiling. And he danced like he was being electrocuted, I said. But you loved him, Mom said softly. I did, I said. I do. I closed the box gently. I'll always carry him, but I think I'm ready to keep living too. Not in spite of losing him, but because I got him, because I was lucky enough to be his. Everyone was quiet. Then Morgan raised her lemonade. To Daniel, she said. To fireflies, Becca added. To grieving with grace and goat poop, Mom said, gesturing toward Tammy, who had apparently wandered into the herb garden. I lifted my glass. To loving people so much they ruin us a little when they go, but make life brighter while they're here. We clinked glasses. That night I sat on the back steps alone for a while, looking at the stars. There were still moments I ached, there always would be. But the weight had shifted. It was no longer a boulder crushing my chest. It was a stone in my pocket. Heavy, yes, but manageable. Something I could carry. I reached for my phone and opened a new note. Things I'm still grateful for. Coffee sisters who refuse to let me wallow. Moms who adopt goats and burn casseroles. The way laughter feels when it's been missing. Daniel for loving me like it was easy, I added one more. The next day, epilogue 1 year later. The goat now lives in Becca's backyard. Don't ask. Morgan started a grief blog called Snort Crying and Sandwiches, which has a small cult following. Mom is leading a mindful mourning support group that includes pottery, interpretive dance, and, inexplicably, a weekly limbo contest. As for me, I'm still a nurse, still sarcastic, still occasionally talking to Daniel when I'm driving alone, and still wearing his old band t-shirt when I clean the house. But I laugh again. I dance in the kitchen again. I've started dating someone new, kind, patient, respectful of the fact that I come with a history and a heart that's a little scarred. Grief hasn't vanished, but it's made room. And in that space, I've found not just survival, but joy.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Storytime with Papa Owl. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe.